Hey there, welcome to the Crossed Over Celebrity channel. My name is Tina and I am a soul alignment coach. And what that means is I help people expand their definition of who they think they are by teaching them about the soul contract. So what I do on this channel is I team up with a celebrity that has crossed over to the other side. We walk through their soul contract. I spend some time with their energy before the video, and we go write down some highlights of what the celebrity would like to discuss. Then we're going to pull some oracle cards right after I walk through their chart, and we'll do a healing mantra at the end as well, some things that we can all work on. So I'm really excited today to bring forward Mr. Evel Knievel. And what a character. So he just really, when I show you his chart, there's so many different polarities going on with this person in this particular life. And there's so much, again, that we can learn from everybody. And that's why these celebrities want to come through, because even though, they came here and they accomplished, things maybe we can view as greatness, or, they had their struggles. And again, these incarnations are all about learning. This is what I call the Earth School, as you may hear from some other teachers. And so we're here to learn things, to open up our consciousness, to have certain experiences that help us do this. And what a phenomenal person that Evel Knievel was, even though he struggled with some real unity consciousness and some things that we'll point out that he would like to get to as well in his chart. And so, okay, if you're new to the channel, thank you to everyone that continues to watch and learn from the messages and what the numbers mean. And so if you're new and you don't know much about the soul contract, I always put a link to a short introductory video, just kind of tells you the history of the contract and how I put the charts together and what the numbers mean. So like I said, I don't want to waste much time because I was really excited. I wasn't a big Daredevil person. I'm not a huge risk taker. That is not in my chart at all. And but I mean, it is somewhat, but not to the level, obviously, that it was in Evel's chart, or Robert is what he was known. I'm going to share my screen here so we can pull up his chart. And there he is. And we're going to highlight my mouse in case I tend to get talking and you don't know where my mouse is. Maybe I need to point something out, but I took I like to pull out a picture of them in person on, because I like to pull from their energy, and a picture always helps of them kind of during their midlife. He never did die in a crash. That's pretty phenomenal in my opinion. But he ended up dying from pulmonary disease at the age of 69 in 2007. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But I did take this, I was by my pictures from Shutterstock. They didn't really have a live one. So this one I pulled off of Wikipedia. But this one is just him at the Wax Museum, and kind of showcases his kind of persona that he took on to, which is in his chart of the Evel Knievel, because he was born Robert Craig. And I believe, when I listened to a couple of earlier interviews with him, and we call him Knievel, Evel Knievel, and he kind of said his last name is Neville. It wasn't really, the K did not appear to be active at that time, but he took on that persona because, again, he ended up with this nickname, which we really like to look at, because now that I know more about these soul contracts, which is based on our names, our birth names, which gives us a set of vibrations that we choose to work through in this lifetime. And those, we translate these numbers or these letters into numbers, and that correlates to energies, that a specific set of energies that we want to work through during our lifetime here. And like I always say, Bashar, I don't know if you know who Bashar is, but Daryl Anka channels a being called Bashar, and he talks about the soul contract and how you choose a set of vibrations to experience. And even though we have free will, how you decide, the free will comes in as how you decide to use these vibrations that you're given us. So it's like walking down a hallway. This is the hallway. You're getting your set of vibrations, but how you choose to walk down that hallway is up to you, because every number it manifests a little bit differently compared to the numbers around it, as well as, again, how conscious we are, where we're at in our level of incarnations. We all come here many times and start to work on gaining consciousness. And I don't like to talk about it's like a lot of people say it's like an ascension, which it kind of alludes to this idea that we're trying to become better, that this is good and this is bad, and that's part of this duality. But it's really not. Everybody's at their own level. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. Those are just the judgments we attach to things in the 3D, because we have this polarity. 3D is all about polarities and duality, and we can't have one without the other. So you can't have any of these numbers, no matter what aspect they're in, without the positive and negative. And so I chose the title Power of Your Beliefs, because this has a very special meaning to Evel Knievel. And so I do want to talk about, first we're going to talk about his karma, because he's a dominant 9, and 9 is the most powerful number you can have in your chart. So when it's in a karmic aspect, I'm just like, bow down to the soul who decide to choose a karma of a 9, which is an extremely disempowering number, can give you a very, things can manifest in a little bit different ways. And like I said, it plays off of other numbers. So when you choose a physical karma of 9, this can be a very disempowering. You can have a tough childhood. The 23 is tied to endurance and is also tied in, even though it's in a talent position, can also be tying in to this tough childhood that he did experience. He did not have a good relationship with his mother. Him and his father and his mother got divorced. Him and his brother ended up being raised by his paternal grandparents. So that's a tough childhood when you really don't have that connection with your direct parents. And so I would consider that. So the interesting thing about the 9s for Evel Knievel is having this as a dominant number. 9s, because they're so powerful, they have what's called this invisible protection from God, and they believe at a very even unconscious level that they will be okay no matter what. And this makes it, as you know very well with Evel Knievel, he can be very hard on the physical body, because he has this in physical karma, and he was very hard on his physical body. So they tend to want to push it beyond its limits. Again, it's about learning to take care of the body, learning to come into the fact that you are a spiritual being, but you're having a human experience. And so this would give him that sense of, and he talked about this in a few interviews I watched, because I like to get their energy. And he talked about feeling indestructible, because when 9s have a very tough childhood and they're very disempowered from their parents. And so as they start to take their power back, they start to feel more and more powerful. And it is all about them learning how to take their power back. And so, but it's also about them learning how to take their power back with great integrity. And he struggled a little bit with that. There's some other numbers that had an effect on his level of integrity. He did want to be a man of his word. He did talk about integrity. He did speak those things. He didn't always live them, as we all know in the human world. It's easier said than done, right? Because there's temptations and there's things that play out, and your numbers carry vibrations and they're going to challenge you. So these nines are very much about power. They can be about destruction of self and others. So you have to be, because we all are a piece of source that gives us great power. It's just that we choose to come with the veil over us, and we choose to take on these limiting beliefs, because in the heaven, when we're on the other side, we don't have those limiting beliefs. They're only here on the earth plane, and we take them on to overcome them. And it's just this little bit of a game that we're playing, and to open up our consciousness and to make us more aware and to have these very physical, separate experiences. So again, this would play out very much for him about being very careful about how he uses his power, because again, you still are under the law of cause and effect, and cause and effect is what you do can come back to you. It's not a punishment. It's just that a law that is, it's not, well, if I don't follow these rules, I'm going to get punished, because we tend to make God a human, and that's, God is all encompassing love. So we tend to punish ourselves. But through cause and effect, it's how you treat others. It will bounce back to you. The more resistance you have, I talk about this in the book, Power versus Force by David Hawkins. Whenever you use any type of a force, there's always a counterforce, and that is a law of karma. A law, and we call it the law of karma, but it's the law of cause and effect. So with that being said, let's get to his talents, his first talents, which are an 8. This is a wonderful talent for him to have. And so he has this number. It's a great grounding energy. It's a very emotional. He can connect emotionally with others. And this meant that even though he was a very high frequency soul, so he was kind of on his own vibration, he could still adjust his vibration to suit others. And so he could, this was really about him coming to fit in, because I would guess with having 9s in his karmas, both of his physical and spiritual karma making him dominant, because we all have a physical and spiritual side, this would tell me a little bit more about his past lives. And so he, in past lives, very much was about, destruction, and probably didn't fit into society, probably could have been a tyrant, maybe chose to, in another life, it's possible with these particular numbers he has in his chart, he could have actually committed suicide in another life. So when I see 8s and talents, it can be meant that they are going to fit in. They'll find a way. They're a chameleon. They can change to fit others, and so, but they also can, because they have this great range of polarity, again, they can slide up and down the light and dark scale. They may have a hard time seeing the difference between right and wrong, light and dark. And he really started off as, and they can be very much criminals and lawbreakers, even if it's in a talent position, because of this fluctuation in polarity. And again, the people around us affects our charts as well. And so that can have a direct correlation to our behavior, because everything starts in the mind, and then goes through our emotional centers, and that's how we manifest. So this made him very grounded, which he really needed to be doing what he was doing, right, with this Daredevil career that he chose. But the 8s are also about, like I said, he started out robbing. He was actually doing robberies, and he knew that he had a sort of awakening, which can really come from this 21-3. It's a Uranus Mars energy, and it's initiation by fire of what we call King Solomon on the other side, and he will have you can have a very intense experience where you'll realize what you're doing is wrong, you're headed down the wrong road. And he kind of had this realization that, oh my, if I keep doing this, I'm just going to end up in jail. I'm just going to be locked away forever. And so the 21 is all about these three elements, and it's all about intelligence, strength, and durability, ability to last, which gives him, but it also could be tied to hardship. But it also, I believed, helped him to come to this realization that he needed to find another way to exercise his need for constant excitement and this adrenaline rush that he was becoming more and more addicted to. That was part of his 21 as well. And so he needed to find a way that was much more to fit into society, right? To fit in, that he wouldn't be poo-pooed. So thank goodness for that. But when he was in jail, and this was around the time he was 18, which correlates, if you add up the 1 and 8, correlates to his 9. So a lot of things to me bring about specific things that happen in your life for a reason. And like a lot of singers, actors, even gurus, they take on a new name. And he was in jail, and there was this prisoner that he was in jail with that called himself, his last name was Knievel with a K, and he called himself Evel Knievel, I think. And so that was when Evel Knievel came about. He found something that was kind of this dark side that rhymed with his name, although he changed it to, instead of Evil, to Evel, like his last name is spelled. So it was Evel Knievel, Evel Knievel, really. But, everybody called him Evel Knievel. And so when he did that, I do want to mention that was really when the ideas, he always liked the Daredevil. This 21 brings in a lot of rebellion, extremism, going against the grain, because 9s bring in a lot of resistance to what is. And that can be a very good thing, because resistance with the 9s is really about you understanding when you feel resistance, to understand there's something that's transforming, and you're to transmute it to a higher level. So the 21, which again was all about that constant need for excitement, he changed his name to Evel Knievel, which brought in, I didn't pull up that particular chart because we would call that an overlay. And it does bring in a few new numbers for him, and 2 of them I'll mention in this reading. I don't like to do the overlays. I like to stick, because your birth chart is 100% power of the numbers, and they play out throughout your whole life. And when we take on a nickname or we change our name, it's called an overlay, and it brings in new energies, but is never as powerful as your birth chart. So I always stick to the main birth chart, but I'd like to mention them for people who've changed their name, because it does bring in other energies. And for him, the critical energy that it brought in for him was the number 5. And that number 5 is tied to that reckless daredevil energy, and it gives you a lot of courage in that respect. And so when he took on that name, it brought him, he already had this rebellion, extremism, purposeless change type of a energy, but this brought it to another level for him personally, with having this him trying to come into this great power, and in a little bit of an infatuation with power, because the 9s can be that as well, and learning how to use his power properly in his life here. So I do want to mention that about the 5s, and he talks about at the age of 8 is when he saw his first kind of Daredevil show, and he was really attracted to that. He loved motorcycles, the sense of, again, 5s bring in this sense of freedom, and the 21s have that sense of excitement. And that was it for him. He just really knew that was what he wanted to do, because when you have a 10-1 in your physical goals, because that's usually tied to in our physical world, the 3D world, what we're trying to achieve. Our spiritual can be a little bit more of this energy of just helping others, and you know, like his spiritual goals gave him this great ability for achievement in whatever area he chose. So that kind of worked really well for him with because 10-1s, they're kind of a service soul energy, so they don't have a specific thing that they're meant to do. And then having 8s, so gave him this great flexibility about being able to fit in any area he chose. So then having these other great talents of endurance and hardship, and being able to use his smarts and his strength and his durability, which again, you know, the 10-1 was all about him finding balance, but the more he served others, the more he would be served. So, okay, so how did he do all of that, right? I kind of walked through the 4s, again, gave him this great ability at a soul level too. The soul steers you kind of where you're supposed to be in your achievements. So we'll talk a little bit about the toxicity though, that being too far on one side of the polarity, you know, versus positive versus negative. And then the 7s were, for him, made him very magnetic. I talk about 7s all the time. They can be a little bit of control freaks. And although you would look at him and think, oh, well, control, what are you talking about? He just let control go to the wind by, you know, playing with his life. But he always had this invisible protection from God, thinking at this subconscious level he'd be okay no matter what. But the 7s can be tied to, it was really about him in this lifetime coming out, living his passion, which he did. And that's what living through the heart is. When I talk about that, that is, you know, but for him it was about opening the heart, bringing people together for, you know, and he did, which he did through his races, bringing like-minded people together who enjoyed that, bringing groups of people together, but opening up his heart to let the energy come through in those groups so that they feel good in themselves, and so he could feel good and others can feel good, because people who are centered in themselves through their heart make other people feel good. Now he had some blockages to that. He's going to talk about that, you know. So even though he had this great ability, the 21-3 is all about this hardship and endurance. He broke 433 bones in his body. So he's got, you see the 4s and the 3s, add them up and it comes up to the 10, because the 10-1 is all about finding balance in your life. That's probably not a lot of great balance. 21-3 is also about finding balance within those things, within intelligence, strength. And so what happened here a little bit with this 21-3 is, and he had over 20 crashes, again, tied to this number here, that constant need for change, rebellion, excitement, because those energies can work very well if you're using them for a bigger cause than yourself. And he was caught up a little bit in the self-importance, turning away others. 3s are very action-oriented Mars, aggressive behavior. They can be very violent. We saw he was very violent towards a gentleman who had wrote a book about him that he found not very flattering, because he was so, where the 3s, the ego is all about self-worth, and the ego can get away from you. And so again, this was a lot of this dark polarity playing out for him, because he would not recognize the work of others. There were other daredevils, and he always said about how, oh, they were using, you know, a bike that was, he used this type of bike because that they were making the bikes easier, you know, and things like that. So he wasn't really giving credit. And I know there was one gentleman that beat one of his records that rode the same bike that he did, but you don't hear him talk about that, because again, you got to be careful about getting caught up in your own self-importance. And what he was meant to learn by this, you know, was about not using that improper force, being violent against others, because the guy who wrote the book about him, and this can come a lot from the 10-1s too, because the 10-1s can be very much it's about balancing the feminine and masculine, and this is about being way too much in the masculine and being in that toxic masculinity. And so what it was is he went with another guy, even though he had his arms in casts, which the 8s are tied to the reaching out, the arms, the hands to others. Here he has them in casts, which is very symbolic. They were broken. And he took another guy and went and found this guy that wrote the book and had the other guy hold him, and he beat him with a bat and caused severe damage to this gentleman, but still preached that that was okay, that he had a right to do that when nobody does. Violence is, again, that is the one thing that is not taking your power back with integrity. It's when you play with that old paradigm, and the 3s and their negative side can be the old belief system, an eye for an eye. And the only thing that can change hurtful or hateful things is through love and compassion and empathy and rising above it, and not falling into these lower vibrations. But he definitely did, he did a lot of good things with his communication as well, because it wasn't all negative. He just wanted me to point out about that, being very careful. And I went through all the numbers with him to pull out what he wanted me to share with you. And so the 3s really are tied to being a teacher energy. And it was something that he, if he had regrets, every learning experience is a learning experience. So if people said, I always want to get like people, what would they do different? What did they really learn? And he could have been a better teacher. Now, he did talk about safety helmets, and he talked about drug abuse and alcohol abuse, even though he didn't always practice what he preached, which he says is kind of this conflicting societal thing, where he talked about taking a shot of whiskey before his races. And that really, he said, was the wrong message. That again, put him where he was saying, you should follow these rules, but I'm above these rules. It's again that self-importance and infatuation with power and believing you're above the rules when other people should follow these rules. It's kind of this distorted energy. And he did want me to talk about that, because he was like, he would have done more with teaching kids about how to be a daredevil in a safe way, and how to be able to expand those energies in a positive way, because all of these energies can be used, in a positive way and a negative way that's harmful. And obviously he didn't need to, go through all of those, breaking of the bones. And the 9s are also tied to vanity and pride and dramatization. And that was something too that he was really tied to. Those are more of the negative energies of the 9s. So, and he said he can definitely, he brought together, as part of the showman, because the 7s are all about taking on these other personas and having people see us in a way we want them to see us, not who we really are. And so then he wanted to kind of meld the Liberace showman and the Elvis showman into this motorcycle daredevil act. And he did a good job with that, I think, about making it kind of this, developing this persona that people really, brought in some excitement, and you could see where that really benefited him. And 3s are all about this poverty to wealth mentality. And they usually, when you have a 3s in your chart, you come in, would like to make a lot of money, or you need to understand how to use your money, and money can be tied to your self-worth, because it's another energy. And so it's about learning your self-worth, and a lot of people can have a lot of money, but they don't have any inner wealth. And so that's kind of what the 3s work on, is being able to see the difference between having a lot of money, but still being this very great, authentic person, and having a lot of love and a wealth of energy inside. And so that was something he struggled with very greatly. The fours in his chart were all about, fours can be very much, they can, for him, again, if it was this excessive desire to be special, he wanted to be number one, right? He had one on his uniform. I think he had a one like he would wear here. Yeah, one here is on his bike. And so the one again is wanting to be number one. You have to be very careful about that, because again, that's that ego, deriving your happiness from having to always be number one. So he was always pushed to do more and more and more to maintain this unrealistic goals that he was setting for him. But again, he ended up, he never did die in a crash, which came from this very powerful, he read this book, somebody had given him this book by Nathan Hill called, let me think here. It was called The Power of the Positive Thinking, something about that. And I know he also has a book, he has several books on the law of attraction and positivity. And that really helped him a lot. He credited his success for that book because he understood that any type of negative thinking could have a detrimental effect on him. One of the things he did was when he went to jump the cars at the first time at the Caesar Palace, he threw a $100 bill in the casino on number 21 and lost. And he thought that was a very bad omen. So again, he was getting this, fours are tied to being able to sense the future, but going into a race thinking that you have a bad omen is not what you want to do. That's the power of these beliefs. And he crashed. He had a really bad crash. He was in a coma for like 21 days. I mean, it's all here in his chart. And so the other thing about fours that I could really see that was playing out more maybe on the negative polarity, because fours can be this, they have children to learn how to share because they can be very selfish. And he did have 4 children, find that very interesting. And but he is also about pride and arrogance comes from this number. And I could see that really a lot in his interviews. It's just how, how that was coming through loud and clear. But he had he used this great incentive to achieve, and he did do that as well. So I give him a lot of credit for using that power of belief in attaining his goals. And that comes from the 10 ones too. I mean, that's really, the 1 is tied to Archangel Michael. It's a very, very, this can be very masculine. Like I said, if you get too toxic about it, but it really is, where he could stay superficial in relationships and have, again, this is another about balancing power. And he was very infatuated with power and being number one and stemming all of his happiness and his self-worth off of the fact that he had to be number one. And there's nowhere to go with that. You just run out of steam eventually. He did run out of steam. And he ended up dying of pulmonary disease, which I thought was really interesting because pulmonary disease is tied to the breath, and the breath is where we get our life force and our passion for life. And as he got older and he couldn't do the jumps, he went around talking about, but it's still not to be able to do it was very hard on him because he lived wanting to be special and, wanting to be, this person, where now he looks at it more like he could see how he could have been more help in the, giving away his, because he didn't use anything technical to do his jumps. It was all based on feeling, and that gives him great credit to this talents of the 8s, this being able to ground his energies and to really know what he's feeling, because that was how he did his jumps. And what a great thing about teaching about intuition and things. He could have been a great teacher. And so I guess he had to teach by example in a way. And maybe that was part of his journey and destination here, was just, you know, he died in 2007, and that's a 9-year. So again, that was the end for him. And that makes sense, you know, that he crossed over at that time, and he was looking pretty rough, all those accidents and stuff. He definitely hard on the body. And so definitely could see that playing out in his charts, but he did leave quite a legacy, and something, you know, for other people to strive for. But again, maybe he would want to come in with a little bit softer, more loving energy, because the 5s are all about healing the heart and opening the heart to love and softer energies. And that was something that it was towards the end of his life, he was doing that a little more often, but it was still hard for him. He was still hiding a little bit inside that little boy who didn't give the love and nurturing that he so craved, as we all do. You know, there's no judgment here on anybody's life. I don't rate them as this was every life is, you know, he had a lot of great philosophies. Every life is meant to be lived, and you don't live sitting on the sidelines. And, you know, he had a lot of these great, you know, when I was kind of going through his energies about bringing people together, about, you know, doing some wonderful things about speaking out against and changing some people's lives, you know. And I just want to go through my notes here. And he talked about realizing his power in some of his interviews that I thought was really spoke to this chart, because 9s are all about coming into your power. And you take more and more of your power, which he did bigger and bigger jumps as you start to see that you can handle it. And then you see the effects it has on others, and that is an encouragement, right? So, and he always talked about how the helmet saved his life. And that was wonderful that he did that. And also with the 3s, he also spoke, you know, we recommend people with 3s about speaking, public speaking. And he did do that before his races. He would try to tell the crowd what he was feeling and going through. And he also wanted to just tell people, kind of considered him to be kind of this gladiator energy, and even talked about Rome. And so kind of a past life experience, I think, for him as a gladiator, this lifetime brought up for him. And so he would fill these arenas and do kind of these death-defying things. I thought that was kind of pretty interesting as well. But then he says, you know, people just realize that no matter how many times you fall, you're not a failure unless you don't get back up and try again. So, you know, he did have some wonderful things that he gave us in those kind of quotes and things that people could gain from what he was saying. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. We're going to go to pulling the cards. So he did get baptized, and he did start to work on his spiritual side. He gravitated toward Christianity. And so we're going to go to the Keepers of the Light Oracle first by Kyle Graham. We're going to pull out an angel, because Christianity is very tied to the angels. And so we'll see. Okay, and so Lady Nada is coming up, and I'm not surprised. Again, thank you, Evel, that this is called Heart Awakening. And again, remember the 7s in a soul destiny were all about healing the heart, awakening, awaken to acceptance and divine love, give and receive in balance. And this is something he said he struggled with, giving and receiving. Especially his family. He tended to push his family aside. He also made a lot of excuses. 8s can be about evading responsibilities. And so he had a really hard time accepting responsibility. He would blame others. Something went wrong in a jump. You know, he didn't take full responsibility. We are the creators of our life, and it is meant for us to take full responsibility for that and for what happens to us. So, okay, we're going to go to the hidden realms next. Some hidden realms, that's for sure. But just his energy, it makes you want to go do something like really daring. I do feel that energy. And so, what comes up for him is the prison WAIF. Now, he spent some time in prison, especially after he beat that guy. He thought he could get away with that he was above the law. And it cost him a lot of money as well, because remember, that's tied to your self-worth. And so that is self-sabotage, which is in this card, poverty consciousness, and that is tied to that 3 and that Mars energy. That's about action, willfulness, violence, improper use of force. And so he said, and this number on here is 31, which is also the 3 and the 1. The 1 can also be very much that toxic masculinity, about unity, stability, and can make you very unstable. The 3 and 1 together is the 4, which is also about abundance and trusting in the flow, that things will work out for you. And because you're not trusting in that flow, and that's why you think you have to take matters into your own hands. And the 7s are very controlling too. So that would have also made him make these very decisions about violence. And so again, they're his self-sabotage. And he said, boy, you want to talk about somebody who sabotaged themselves. So be very aware of that. You have those numbers in your chart. It's really about us. We all have the light and dark sides. I have a 3 as well. And I definitely remember I raised horses, and I was training a real difficult, more stubborn personality type. And I remember trying to really push and had all this resistance and trying to use force, which was so ridiculous against this large animal. And you want to talk about cause and effect. And I think she ran me right over, and which would be a total, it just made me realize that this isn't, I was opening myself up to teaching and learning how to train with kindness and understanding. But again, I had that dark side as well, where I had that tendency from that 3 to want to push. So we all have it. We have to identify those sides, because if you evade them, they come back to you, because it's wanting to get your attention, because it's meant for us to see how that works in our lives. So the next one we're going to is the secret language of light. Come on, Evel. I'm such a scaredy cat. I'm like, what am I doing? Interviewing. You look people. I was always the biggest chicken in the world. So next time the next time I am afraid of something, I'm gonna channel his energy though. And so what we have here that just came through is insight. And that's number 13, which adds up to his 4. And it's a 1 and a 3 as well in his chart. So here again, we're bringing through a 3 and a 1, like he had this prison WAIF, that one side of the energy. And now we have that positive energy coming through. And so what is insight? Let's talk about that. And let's see what Denise Jarvie, she does this wonderful book, Transmissions from Your Soul. What a great card to pick, Evel. Thank you. So it's about refining your psychic senses. You are about to see further, higher, and deeper through space and time. Your psychic skills are expanding and seeing through the lens of your soul. Hone your abilities by reading about or doing a workshop on intuitive development. We are all psychic. It's a part of who we are. But we have thrust this ability into the background in favor of other senses, right? In favor of our physical senses, because remember, we have the spiritual side and the physical side, and people who are very unconscious are really caught up in their physical. They need to feel it, taste it, smell it. And we have all these other senses that are really the ones driving us, like his 4s and that in his goals, which were all about this push from his soul level to do these very high achievements. And so Problems occur when we keep looking at the manifested and the world for proof of our worth. Because remember, he had these huge worth issues going on. You are worthy just because you are here. You don't need to be number one. That's all this illusion the ego creates. There's nothing to prove. You could become an intuitive reader if this is something you desire. It could also mean you are learning to trust what you feel, and the next steps to take will drop into your mind in the following days. Very good. And so if we talk about inspired actions, he was pointing me to the join a local meditation group or a psychic circle. Learn how to trust the insights and wisdom you receive. And so that's all about that self-valuing, self-trust. You can bring on the energies of, I had gone to an angel guide. It was so empowering. Kate Raymond, she's wonderful. And so those angels that generate self-worth, self-valuing, and self-trust are the archangels, angels Demetrius and Nara. And they will ask and call on them, and they will assist you in those values. And join a group. I'm always signing on for new things to keep developing my psychic abilities, because I have some of that in my karma, which kind of blocks me at times. So I'm always looking for developing that and working on that always. So the next one is work your light. This is so fun. So you're already doing it. Stop overthinking. Keep facing your true north. So this is again about that self-trust. You're already doing what you need to do. We tend to overthink things. It's really about letting go, which is super, super important. And he had aids and talents, which gave him this great ability actually to let go. And that's what kept him pushing forward. Let go of what happened in the past. He could let go of that, right? Because he didn't take that last crash with him into his new jump. He just saw that new one as being his next success. So that is probably one of the greatest things that he proved to us with this ability of positive thinking. How many of us could let go of of what happened when you have a huge crash, even when you would get thrown from a horse or something, boy, it takes you a long time to get back on, because you start, that plays with you, it messes with you when you have that kind of trauma happen to you. So he, that was one of the greatest gifts he was teaching us, is that power of positive thinking. So he read that book and exercised it in his life, which is just phenomenal that he was able to do that. Okay, where would you like me to go next? Right here. So, something else I wanted to say, but we'll come back to me about his letting go of the past. So he had two cards. Oh, well, this is perfect. Always taking risks. Who else would this card come out for but Evel Knievel, right? The biggest risk taker, one of the biggest risk takers probably that ever lived, right? And then stillness, and we have the swan here. This is all a little bit about hidden stuff going on here when you see the swan. Swan is all about these projections, right? Swans look elegant. They look like they do everything with the greatest of ease. But what you don't see is what's going on underneath here. The turmoil and the things underneath. But what two great things together. Taking risks, because it's really important to do that, to get out of your comfort zone, he's saying. But stillness, going deep within, following that intuition, knowing, getting rid of all of that inner stuff going on that below the surface of the emotions. Very important. Very beautiful cards. Thank you for those. Yeah, the hawk too represents the vision, and the rocks are his, you know, when he did the Snake Canyon jump, you know, snake representing transformation, right? And he got up that morning to do it, and somebody had drew a bullseye on the opposite. This is reminding me of that, and that messed with him a little bit. And he ended up, when his rocket went off, his parachute ejected, and he claims he did not hit it. But he also said in that interview, and I was listening for him, where he actually, because it was such an acceleration, he blacked out for a moment. So he says he definitely could have done that as a reaction, although he said he had it taped so he wouldn't do it. But he says he takes full responsibility, but he didn't make that jump. And I mean, it's so amazing that he was able to survive it. You know, he didn't see the beauty in that at the time, you know. So we're going to go on to the wisdom of the oracle and keep moving forward here. Hey, Evel, what do you got for us here, please? What would you like to say? Three, between worlds. Three comes up again. Give him a little bit of a problem. That three is a master number. Need a little drink. So, between worlds. Let's see what this one has to say. Because that threes is that Mars energy. So it's when to take action, when to not take action. And let's see what he means by this between worlds. Let me find the page, please. Here we go. Of course, it's on page 8, which is on this chart. It's funny how the numbers always play out. It's not funny, it's kind of meant to be. So this is all about transitions. Not being quite out of one situation and fully engaged in another, temporary blindness and no man's land. So between the worlds is where you must let go of the tendency to make assumptions. This is a time when you are unable to see what is ahead. Cultivate curiosity and trust the process of change and growth. You are done learning the lessons of recent experiences, and this place between what was and what will be is a state of making and unmaking and making again. What is essential now is to admit not knowing. There's a great freedom and power to be unleashed. A mystery that is not yours to understand, is not yours to understand, weaves the web of life within a divine matrix of consciousness greater than your own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, desires, and decisions. So the seeds that were planted in the past begin to take root, but what surfaces will probably not be what you expect. When you see between the worlds, you are invited to see with the curious eyes of a child glimpsing a rainbow for the first time. Do so and you will not be disappointed. And I guess you could say he understood that between worlds, and what I was saying was about he didn't focus on what had happened. He started to create something new in his next jump or how he was going to do it. And the fun of that, instead of spending his time on the past, you always need to stay in the present. That is the between worlds, because you're always manifesting from the present. It's okay to hold vision and to feel how exciting it would be to accomplish certain things, but you still have to be in that present moment. And so we're going to go to the archetype cards, which is all about that light and dark side that we all carry. And so I'm really curious to see what he's going to want to bring out. Oh, something popped out. Oh, 2 of them did, and I'm going to take both of them because I kind of got this impression about him. So he really wanted to be seen as a hero and a king. He wanted to be on top, right? So we're going to do the king first. So the light attributes of a king is enlightened, benevolent leadership, benefiting those in your charge. So, you know, benefiting by your example, anybody that you have authority over, and being enlightened, knowing in the good way. Now, what is the shadow side of being a king? Excessive feelings of entitlement and rulership without restraint. And that's where he got himself into trouble. He felt very entitled at times. So we've got the hero or the heroine. What is the light side of that? Passion for a journey of personal empowerment. And I could say see that very much the light side, where he really played both of these on both of these cards. And the shadow attribute of that is escapism and a false sense of heroism, focusing too much on look how great I am and what I've done for the industry. And he actually was kind of being that way, but he did have that passion for empowering himself. And so I think these are two super, super great cards to show that kind of duality and how that really, he was definitely on both sides of that spectrum. And so I have this talking to heaven deck. So believe in your, and this is talking to heaven, believe in yourself, you can do it. And look at him leaping right off the cliff. I mean, yeah, this is his energy. There's no doubt. You know, like he said, it's failure wasn't an option. It just meant you had to do it again. If it didn't work out, you just came back again. It didn't matter how many bones you broke in your body. He had a, probably the funniest thing I've ever saw was his skeleton. He actually had a doctor's put together with all the different pins and stuff in all of his bones. And it just goes to show you that our body really runs off of our belief system, because there's just, it's unbelievable that he survived, that he died of a lung issue. You know, I don't know. It just goes to show you there's more going on here, even with our bodies. You know, I always preach about taking care of the body because it is the vessel that we're given in this lifetime. And it's really important to take care of. And he's agreeing with that as well. But it is amazing, that belief system, how the belief system is tied. So our final card that we're going to read on before the mantra here will be the and this one is called Clarity, and it's 15. And now he said his 5 was in the Evel Knievel, and he had, of course, the 1 in his birth name. And so 1 and 5 add up to 6, and 6 is all about balance, harmony. And I love this going within with all the blue, which is your tied to the throat chakra and your how you express yourself. And so we're going to read, because this is from Archangel Metatron, Self-Mastery. And he was a master, right? A master daredevil. You seek clarity now on something that is bothering you and making you feel out of balance. So this is about the viewers. This is a message for you guys out there. It may be an answer that just won't come, or an explanation or higher meaning to something happening around you. So often we think of clarity as arriving at one defined moment in time, but clarity can come in waves when we quiet our bodies and minds and allow a moment to just be. It can last for hours, days, or months. It is the still small whisperings of our soul that we often ignore or don't have time to properly hear. A state of tranquility is needed where we can stop and allow our spiritual guides to connect with us, and it helps us to hear them and feel their love for us. To help with this, Archangel Metatron asks you to breathe in aquamarine energy to bring balance to your emotional state and realign and strengthen you. Slowly and deeply breathe in this blue ray to fill your entire body, and then breathe it out. Surround yourself with this aquamarine light and feel held, supported, and lifted out of your worries, concerns, and stress. Just allow them to dissolve. Again, we're talking about letting go. Having created space to hear your own wisdom and spiritual intelligence, you are reminded that no one has the answers to the questions but you. You may seek counsel and advice from others, but there must be no delegation of responsibility. Your life deserves answers from the one in control of it, and that is you. Metatron will nudge, prompt, and support you, but he will not step in to answer everything for you. He serves you by empowering you to hear your own answers and trust in what you hear, feel, and sense. He will often give you a piece of the jigsaw, but will not complete it for you. Like the teacher that he is, he encourages you to learn and find your own way. And this starts with clearing away what is unimportant and focusing on what is. Clarity cannot be found in hectic, frantic steps of being. It is found by giving yourself permission to stop, breathe deeply, and center yourself. Spend time in silence, free of distractions, noise, and chaos. You return to the simplicity of listening to your own heartbeat and your own breath, slowing everything down to a point of deep serenity where clarity can be found. Don't push for an answer or solution. It may be that much is still to be revealed or played out in a situation or relationship you inquire about. Realize you will be given what you need for now. Feel into the fresh perspective that aquamarine energy gives, and allow it to aid and help you reach diamond clarity whenever you need it. It is here waiting to serve you. What a beautiful message, and I think a great way to wrap up about what letting go means and how you can go about doing that, so that you can move forward in your life and start to build that self-trust. The angels can't give us all the answers. Sometimes I ask and ask too, and I know that. And it's all about developing the trust and understanding that there are no mistakes. There's only opportunities for growth. So the healing mantra that Evel Knievel would like us to work on today is called Opening My Mind. This is by the Matt Kahn healing mantra deck, and he's a great healer himself. Okay, so the mantra is going to be, I allow myself to see beyond my beliefs and ideas. I allow myself to see beyond my beliefs and ideas. I allow myself to see beyond my beliefs and ideas. Okay, and so what is, he will tell us in here, opening. Okay, it says, when your mind opens, you are no longer limited by fearful beliefs or at odds with your own healing journey. With an open mind, you are aware of a bigger cosmic picture where your personal life ushers in your highest potential by uplifting the consciousness of humanity. As your mind opens, life is not just centered around your personal gains and losses, but shining your light for the well-being of all, wherever you happen to be. This mantra is ideal for ending the inner negotiation with the ego, unraveling self-sabotage, and confronting the inevitability of loss. And so all of the things that Evel Knievel had to all deal with himself was that ego, the self-sabotage, and the loss. So thank you so much for those wonderful messages and that great mantra that we can all use in the next few days to help us to heal those own issues within us all. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It's free, and then it helps get the message out to others. I'm trying to grow the channel, so I appreciate any of your help in that. And I want to thank you all for being here, and lots of deep, great gratitude for Evel Knievel. And with that, I'm going to end this transmission and I'm sending you so much love. Thank you.